Hi, everybody. David Cantor here, host of UUCC Zoom In Live. Well, our next show is coming up this coming Monday, May the 24th, 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern, with a very special guest, Meg Pawkin. Okay, I got to go off script for a few seconds here. You might be wondering why I was laughing so hard at the start of this announcement. Here's the deal. You might recall during the vice presidential debate last fall that Mike Pence had a run-in with a bug, and we all marveled about how he did or did not respond to that. Well, I've got a fly the size of an antelope floating around my office right now, and I was just envisioning how that would feel when that bug landed on my bald head while I was talking to you. Anyway, back to the show. Many of you know Meg from her time in leadership at the former First Unitarian, where she held a variety of roles, including being board president during one of our key periods of transition, including being a leader during the conversations about reunification. And of course, many others of you will know Meg because you voted her to be one of our most trusted congregants, and therefore served on our ministerial search task force, which recently delivered some promising news to us. So you might want to attend the show just to hear what Meg has to say about that experience and maybe some gossip about her fellow task force members. But of course, like our other guests, Meg's got a whole lot more to say beyond that. Meg is a lawyer who practices in the field of elder care and might have some good observations and tips for all of us in that regard as well. I'll be joined by my co-host, Claudia Victoroff, and of course, we'll have the Jack Ullman comedy moment. Looking forward to seeing you Monday, 8 to 9 Eastern. See you then. Bye now.
The National Conference of State Legislatures this year, during this time of the pandemic, have named workers in the following fields as essential workers: energy, childcare, water and wastewater, agriculture and food production, critical retail, i.e. grocery stores, hardware stores, mechanics, critical trades, construction workers, electricians, plumbers, transportation, and nonprofits and social service organizations. We light our chalice this morning in honor of all those who have engaged in the work of these above-listed fields for the last year in an effort to keep our whole world safe, together, and cared about.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Peggy Lagodny, and I'm a worship associate for the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Cleveland. I'd like to welcome you to this morning's service. We're doing things a little differently today. Our annual meeting will follow the service for those who are members. And we thought this week we would like to give you a look behind the curtain at the people that help keep UUCC running. So, without further ado, welcome to this morning's worship.
We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know we will, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. It will be hard, we know, and the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Woyaya, 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 we are going. Heaven knows where we are going, but we know we will. And we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Woyaya, 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 Woyaya,
this week is sort of all about, us expressing our appreciation for all the work that you guys have done as staff members. And, I think that as a congregation, I think we know that there's a lot of work that has happened to make our services work during the pandemic, but we don't always understand everything that went on. I was collecting some stats, and we've had 60 or so virtual weeks of service, since the pandemic started. You've done 83 or maybe more than that different band lab recordings or band lab productions, I guess. So productions for this actual, for using that software to actually put together services. We started this back in March for our first virtual service, and the first band lab recording sort of started in April 5th, the beginning of April. So there's a lot that's had to happen. And so I guess, what did it take for you to get your transitioning from in-person services to this, to what we see now?
The push was, all right, we got to figure this out. And I spent probably 2 solid days looking at different options for recording software that was web-based that people could use. And I ended up settling on BandLab because it seemed pretty user-friendly, like pretty easy to learn, and it was available on all different kinds of platforms, which not all of them are. It didn't require any kind of a paid app, or it seemed like the smallest technological leap. And I'm really grateful for the members of the choir and the youth choir and the women's ensemble, and just everything that, even for you to say out loud, like 83 BandLab recordings. That's a couple of years ago, that is not, I'd never even heard of BandLab, and I would never have imagined how much of my life it would consume.
Right, because it's not just a matter of, each of those individual recordings, I imagine, takes a significant amount of time to put together into a finished product.
Right. There's just like with live singing, there's balancing to be done between voices, and there's synchronization, and sometimes there's lining up of a consonant, like you get a certain, like a T or an SH consonant that really pops, and you can't have it sound like like a lawn sprinkler at the end of a phrase. And so then that requires like zooming into the sound wave and adjusting people in tenths of a second and things like that. It's very strange, or I guess it's not very strange anymore, but it seemed like it at the beginning. Rehearsing and preparing songs for a church service, it used to be, and I hope it will go back to before too much longer, it was all in the kind of the front end. We would rehearse, and anything that had to be worked out with coordination, balance, blend, whatever, would all have to happen in the rehearsal process. And then come Sunday morning, or whenever that music was to be performed, it would just happen. And hopefully it was prepared well enough to happen in a satisfying way. Now it's just kind of like, all right, everybody record your parts. And then all of the coordination, all of the director's responsibilities kind of come at the back end of figuring out and retroactively saying, well, this person's mic was a lot better than that person's mic, and so I have to now balance that, or else I hear nothing but this individual voice.
Right. So what are you looking forward to most about maybe returning to normal?
There's a lot that I'm looking forward to, and I'm not saying that we should rush back to returning to in-person, because I want everyone to be safe and I want everybody to be healthy. But boy, do I miss that connection of singing together, making music together in real time. I often remind the choir, I used to say this at the beginning of every rehearsal, and I hope to get back to saying it again, that singing together is a sacred act. And that sacredness does not require expertise. It does not require, a degree in music or anything like that. That sacredness comes from lifting our voices together, creating something musically, creating something spiritually that none of us can do as individuals. It takes that collective. It takes that group to do something coordinated. And so even hymn singing, for example, right? And you think about hundreds of faith traditions all across the globe, all across different spectrums of belief, have all come to this same idea of, why don't we sing together? And that will help us connect to one another. That will help us connect to something greater than ourselves. And that's something that I really miss, is I really miss being in a room where that is happening, where people are expressing that joy together, or expressing that sorrow together, if that's the occasion. But being there for one another and making music in that kind of collaborative, collective way we can do an imitation of that online, and we can do all kinds of things to make it work and to make it feel similar. But there's no replacing that human connection that comes with the personal collective experience.
Well, I think, for us, I would say, speaking as a one congregant, one family, I think we've really felt the sacredness of the music that you've brought together. I think that having a family together and being able to sing hymns together, it does create that space, and we really appreciate that offering.
Please join us in our Unison Reading by Oprah Winfrey. I believe there's a calling for all of us. I know that every human being has value and purpose. The real work of our lives is to become aware and awakened to answer the call.
So strange.
that I can interview you and as a member of the staff of UUCC. But first, I would like to say how much I appreciate your breadth of knowledge, your humor, your generosity of spirit.
Well, thank you.
I love your stories about growing up in Florida, partly because some of my grandchildren are growing up in the same area in Florida.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay, so to start the interview, I would like you to tell us, some people may not know, what is your official title at the church?
Sure. Yeah. My title is Director of Religious Education. So that is my, on the business card, as it were.
Okay. And what are your major responsibilities?
Well, so I would say my job has shaped itself in many ways over some changing years here. I arrived at First Unitarian right at a transitional point for the congregation. So I started literally January of 2018. So just after ministerial changeover, and so I've kind of been in this situation between that process and then the merger, of course, with the UUCC. So what I can say is that honestly, my role has changed a lot in that time frame. So sometimes I have a very teacherly role. Sometimes I'm just kind of a classroom person and coming up with programs. Sometimes I'm emphasizing or in a situation where like our youth are doing big things, and so I'm more of a sort of youth director and program director doing things like that. Sometimes there are big church-wide policy type questions going on, and so it's more of a meetings and kind of visionary conversations about how things ought to go or how things should be, and then sometimes more of a pastoral role, leading worship or leading groups that are more built about our spiritual lives and things like that. And I try to see all of those as pretty organically related to each other. So a thing about me, which is just part of my background that I bring with me, is that I do have a master's of divinity, and I have spent a lot of time doing church work as well as having an academic background. So I kind of try to see myself as sort of like a Swiss Army knife of different tools, and I just pull the necessary one out depending on what's going on.
Okay. All right. Over your years with the, let's see, 18 you started, so that's about 3 years ago. Okay. Yeah. Is there anything that you could say has been your most significant contribution to the life of the church?
Most significant. I will say a lasting one was very early on. I did a sermon series in the summertime on the Stoic philosophers. My whole approach was that, the Stoic philosophers were this group of Greek intellectuals, but they were really down to earth, and they were really addressing how to live a good life in a way that I felt like really had a lot to say to a modern sort of audience. And I think that really stuck with people who were there to hear it. And that approach, the sort of series approach, is to me a really great way to wed together sort of worship and sort of spiritual formation kinds of questions, which has had sort of an impact. And I say that partially because we're also going to be heading into, I've alluded to this in the e-blast, we're going to be doing a sermon series again this summer, not on the Stoics, but on a different topic. And so hopefully I'll have a chance to make another impression. But I would say that has had interestingly enough, the thing that I talk to people about, they usually come back to is that one is pretty frequent.
Yes, I remember that. That was soon after we started attending services. Okay. And we're all looking forward to the new series, topic to be announced.
I'm basically, I have the topic all sorted out, but I don't have my materials all together yet. So I kind of want to keep it under my hat until I can show off a nice fancy, like a poster or something that looks good and does a good job conveying what we're going to be doing. So.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the last year and a half. Has the pandemic, how has the pandemic in any way changed your job? What did you have to learn to do differently? And was there anything that was surprising at that point? If
I can just say, I both appreciate this question and the chance to talk about it, because My joke early on had been, there was no class in seminary on pandemic
Right.
leadership. There's no paradigm for this. There was no one in any church tradition, no one in any religious leadership position has ever dealt with this. So there was so much to figure out. So it was very much, I think, all of us sort of by the seat of our pants, day by day, figuring this stuff out. So it has absolutely shaped and kind of reshaped everything that we've been doing. So I would say my job and my role through this process looks very different than what it does in person. And that's we had spoke about this the other day, actually, you and I, Pat, because I was looking at a program I was hoping to get going that was going to be kind of young adult oriented and really just a chance to bring people together in community, that might not normally gather in quite that way. And I think I got the first version of that in the world the week of, or kind of the moment that the pandemic came about. And that is was a really sharp transition then to what I did then have to learn, which is a much more digital focused way of presenting the world. In fact, my wife jokes with me. She says, now I just have aspirations to be a YouTube celebrity or something, because I spend all my time with microphones and camera angles and setting up different things. Certainly a lot of time learning video editing software. So I definitely have learned all the Macintosh programs and things that have allowed me to some of the most fun things I've done this year are putting together some of the sort of videos and things that have been more produced from my end. I did one about John Lewis that I was very proud of. This was now months and months and months ago. But all that is to say, spending time learning video production software is not normally part of my job. That has almost never shown up. But this year it was crucial. And our digital offerings, of course, they're not the same. There's no way in which they could be. Digital worship and in-person worship are fundamentally different. That being said, the world we're entering is going to be one where I think the digital space is still going to be really important. So we're going to keep working on it. I'm still going to be thinking about YouTube and other ways to get information and stuff out into the world. Though part of that will be coming up to a new synthesis after the pandemic, or whatever. I don't want to say after the pandemic. Goodness, I don't want to jinx us like that. But in a new paradigm, post vaccinations at least, where we come up with a new way of thinking about how we do this ministry work, because some of it might be online and it might be toward audiences that aren't necessarily always with us in our building, but it's still become an important place for people.
Well, we in the congregation, and perhaps more specifically, we worship associates certainly are very grateful for the time and the effort that you and all the staff has put into adopting to this new normal in terms of doing services. So let's see. Okay. Actually, I think that is about all of the questions that I have. Is there anything you would like to add?
I would love to ask you all, especially coming from the standpoint of the worship associates, what your I don't want to say favorite, but maybe a surprisingly rewarding part of this has been, because I will say as a staff person, I feel more like we are kind of imposing this on the congregation, and because of course we have to figure it all out, and we're doing all the back end stuff, so we kind of bring it to you all. So has anything been surprisingly affirming or rich or deeply felt for you all? Anything that surprised you with how powerful it was?
How powerful it was to do it differently?
Yeah, in this new format, something that you wouldn't have thought a digital thing could have communicated or conveyed, but it did.
Well, as other members of the committee know, I have had some real difficulties with, recording, and I had to buy myself a little tripod, and then taking it from the phone camera to the PC to the drive where it could be seen by those who need to see it, and it was, and it's still, I think I have it under control now, but even now I sometimes have problems. But I thank you all for being patient with me.
Well, it's been quite a process, but I feel like one of those old sayings is the if you want to see the true character of someone, you have to see them in crisis, and this has been a crisis for many congregations, and
Mhm.
I think that we've shown from ourselves is our willingness to be patient, to bear with one another and struggle together, which I think is something we wouldn't have learned if the pandemic hadn't happened. So
Yes,
perhaps there's a lining here somewhere to see.
right. And I think we did quite well. So thank you very much. We will
Thank you.
look forward to the other staff interviews as well. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Please join us in our Unison Reading by Wendell Berry. My wish is simply to live my life as fully as I can, in both our work and our leisure. I think we should be so employed. And in our times, this means that we must save ourselves from the products that we are asked to buy in order, ultimately, to replace ourselves.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good, Peggy. How are you?
Good. Hello, everyone, and I would like to introduce to you, in case you haven't met her yet, Shirley Nelson. Shirley's our administrator and the person that makes things happen. She's a key person at UUCC, and I'd really like to let you get to know her better. So, Shirley, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and describe the job that you do here at UUCC?
I'd be delighted. So I've been a part of the UUCC family for a number of years, and it started 10 years ago at least at the society when I started working there as an administrator part-time. It was on the heels of a job that I call my big job. And so I was kind of ushered into semi-retirement, not willingly at the time. So I ended up at the society thinking, okay, I'll stay for 6 months and find a real job. And it's been now 11 years, 12 years.
Wow. Yeah.
So there are many reasons why I've stayed, because I realized that I needed a little break. And so I stayed. And as I began to meet people and to know people and to learn about Unitarian Universalism, I became very intrigued and interested in knowing more about it. And I was meeting some great people and made some friends. And so by the time we merged with the larger church, I'd been there for a number of years, and all the time that I was there was spent not just working, but I had my mom to care for a number of years, who passed away last year.
I'm sorry.
And then I started school 4 years ago. And initially that was going to be a 2-year trek, and it turned into 4 because I was just going for counseling. Then I decided to stay to go for ministry.
Wow.
And so that journey will come to an end in June. My work at the church has been primarily administrative in nature. I used to say I'm the cook and the janitor and everything, but specifically what I've done in the past couple of years at UUCC has been being the person to oversee building rentals along with Ken King, and all that means is scheduling people into rooms, talking with anyone who's interested in having a wedding, memorial service, who want to meet in small groups, large groups. But that was my job. And up until the pandemic, it was pretty full, that part of my job. I also do payroll, make sure that people are paid on time. I do the Hawk, I create the newsletter, and that's a monthly endeavor. And I'd say the other things that I do are sort of hit and miss, not always on a steady, regular basis. when the forum is in session, I do a lot to support them, and my time supporting them was increased when the pandemic set in. And since I didn't have as many rentals to do, then I was able to do more of that. And then the other is just a mixture of things that come down through the tubes via email or phone calls of different types of requests from people.
Great. Well, every time I have to work with you, Shirley, it's always a joy. I always, you're so wonderful with anything I've ever needed help with. I always know that you're the great person to go to. So how did your job change during the pandemic? Was it, as you said that, you did a little bit more with the forum. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Yes.
Prior to my being involved with helping with the forum, it was Aaron Justice's job.
Mm-hmm.
So now that she's no longer here, I picked up the slack by helping to create their bulletins.
Oh, nice.
And everyone sees the end result, but there's a lot that happens before we get there.
Mm-hmm.
And so it simply meant a lot of dialogue to get it right in order to make it according to how Susan wanted it to be. And then just doing the artwork and making sure all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted.
Mm-hmm.
And then handing it over to Susan and her team.
Great. So during this past year, are there any lessons or insights that have come to you?
The biggest lesson, I would say, is realizing the necessity of being a team player and being willing to make adjustments, even when they're not comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the pandemic, we have all been touched by it. And there are things that were difficult for everybody. And so what I just kept in my mind throughout this time period is that let's just keep it simple. I'm aware that we're all being touched by this. And my job is to remember that.
Mm-hmm.
And the insight from it is primarily that everybody's doing the best they can.
Yeah.
And so to kind of hold people gently.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're
Shirley,
welcome.
it's been so wonderful talking to you, and I can't wait to see you in person. Hopefully that'll be soon. And anybody, if you ever need to get in touch with Shirley, she's right there for you. Thank you.
And it's been a pleasure, Peg. Thank you.
each week we come together as a people. Together we share stories, love, aspiration. We also share our bounty in ways that express our UU values. May this important ritual of sharing abundance remind us that making our world better is a task best shared.
Hi.
Hi, Reverend Joe. It's nice to be here with you.
It's good to be with you.
And this is a nice opportunity to kind of get to know you a little better and know more about what you've been doing this past year. So I know it's been, a big change for everybody. What are some of the things that have been most important to you in this past year?
I think one of the biggest surprises of the last year was what an opportunity this could be. I was able to invite a friend from Wales to be part of our service. We were able to have church with the church in Fort Collins. I've been able to guest preach in England and Canada, this year without ever leaving my house. So that's been a real bonus of the year. I think it's really given us an opportunity to really consider what it means for folks who can't come to church, like what service might look like for them. And I really feel like we understand our responsibility to those folks more than we did before.
So what kinds of things did you have to do to make worship, digital worship happen?
So many things. I had to find the best apps for the software. So I went through 4 teleprompter apps. I went through a bunch of different video recording apps. I had to learn how to make movies through iMovie. The joke is at our house, we became independent film producers from all the coordinating and all the recording and all the sound balancing and light balancing and all that. None of which, of course, we had any idea about before. So there was a lot of learning to be done. And it all needed to feel sacred enough. It needed to feel as though what we were offering was not a show, but an experience that people felt invited into. And that was really important.
And how did this affect the way you work with staff?
So many more meetings than we used to have. Because we don't have the casual in the hallway, hey, here's an idea, or walking down the hall and see Miss Shirley. It became, everything had to be either an email or an intentional meeting. Email for one person is okay, but if you want to start brain sharing it meant a Zoom meeting. And I have been on Zoom so much this year, as has everybody, which is part of the reason we wanted our Sunday services to be important enough that people would spend yet another hour looking at their screens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what kinds of things do you do that maybe people may not be aware of?
I think the thing that I hope is behind the scene is all of the editing and shaping that has to happen. In the before times, as I like to say, we would get together and we would meet and talk about how's the service going, what's the shape going to be and all that. But now it's been much more, has been much more intentional because you don't have the sort of spark of being together. And so, like now I sometimes include visual images in the middle of my sermon, which I never did before. Mm-hmm. And so that means finding the image or an image, finding a way to insert the image, timing the image, so that it's there just enough to not be distracting, but also long enough to have an impact, and so I've done a lot more internet searches on.
Okay, wait a minute, there's something wrong. I must not be recording because this keeps going off. What did I do here? I thought I had started it.
I didn't hear the boop before.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
All right.
I've got your questions here, so I'll work around it.
Oh, okay.
And this is a perfect example of things I've had to do for the last year.
So do
A
we
lot of
need
tech
to, so we
support.
don't need to start again? We can just keep going?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'll get rid of this part.
Okay.
I will say that a lot of things I've had to do this year that I hadn't had to do in the past was tech support. I had to do a lot of tech support. Teaching people how to use Zoom, how to record and send files. And that meant me also learning how to make it easier. In the beginning, it was a very cumbersome process. By the end, I figured out if I send someone a link, they have to click on that link and it'll put it right in the proper folder. Easy peasy. But that took months to figure out. So there was lots of things that, we couldn't have thought about in advance. That's a lot of what happens behind the scenes.
Yeah. And what has it been like for your ministry this year? Have there been things that are more difficult because you can't see people, or?
Yeah, ministry is a relational job, right? It's a calling to be with people, and to not be with them except online has been terrible. And online with Zoom delays, and people are, especially in the beginning, were very uncomfortable and weren't relaxed and being themselves, and so you didn't get a chance to really feel how they're feeling or see how they're feeling. So it's been a real challenge for pastoral care, because I don't know if you know this, but when you ask someone how they are, they will lie to you. They will say, "Oh, I'm fine," but in person you can see that they're not.
Yeah. Well, that is what we're taught to do, but anyway.
Yes.
And has there been anything that's been particularly rewarding about this past year?
I think that what's been the most rewarding has been the expansive nature of what we can do if we, I guess, are forced to, or now that the door's open, we might continue to. I think that services that are multi-platform, in person and online, offer us the ability to see ministers from across the world. I have engaged with a couple other ministers of color, doing guest spots with them. And it really is a way for the congregation to taste the variety of ministries that are out there. Like my buddy Ant in Wales. There's no way we could afford to bring him from Wales to Cleveland for a service. That would be astronomical. But for a simple exchange, I sent him something, he sent me something, and then we were part of the other service. That just, I think, really speaks to our ability to be a global faith. I'm very excited about that. I mean, I wouldn't go through the pandemic again to discover that, but I think once the door's open, so we should keep walking through it without giving up what we had before.
Definitely. Well, is there anything else that you would like to share with the congregation before we come to a close?
I think the thing that has been hardest for me is preaching to a tiny little camera that, is like this big. It doesn't give you any response. It doesn't let you know how people are feeling. It doesn't afford you the opportunity to smile at people and have them smile back at you. It is felt kind of cold sometimes, and so I have to imagine that you're all there, even though I'm in a small room, or you see me preach against the brick wall, and I have to imagine that you're there and imagine what you're like, and that's been kind of hard. It's not been the greatest thing, not being with people that you're called to serve them, but doing it by remote.
Well, I think I can say, probably for most of the congregation, that we appreciate all that you have done, and that it has really been a different and enriching experience in some ways. It's not what any of us would have wanted, but it's been good. So thank you.
Thank you. So I have a question for you.
Okay.
What's it been like on the worship team this last year? What have you had to learn?
Mostly technical stuff. How to record on my phone, which I had never done before because I wasn't on Facebook. I mean, I was on Facebook, but I never posted on Facebook.
You were a lurker.
Yes, I'm still a lurker. I still don't post on Facebook. But and the whole thing about saving the files and uploading them, that was extremely difficult. It sounds so simple, but it was very difficult. And then, doing the setting and the lighting. So it's the technical stuff, definitely.
Oh, yeah. I forgot all about lighting and setting.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So, yeah, that was it.
I talked to Allan and Mike and Sharon about this interview, and we all agreed that we could not have done this year without the worship team's help. I mean, you've been particularly adaptive, and nobody yelled at me, and no one cursed me out when they couldn't figure things out, which I really appreciated. So without the worship team's really strong effort, we couldn't have done what we've been able to do. And I think what we've been able to do is something that we can all be pretty proud of. So I'm going to thank you also for that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good.
We're outside the office of Sharon Edmond, our events coordinator. Sharon is the one who makes the magic happen. She's the one who takes all of the pieces that have been created by the service participants and puts them together to create our Sunday online services. It's Saturday morning and Sharon is hard at work. Let's take a look. Hi, Sharon.
Hi, Peggy.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good.
Good.
So what I would like to do today is let the congregants know exactly who you are. You're kind of the person behind the curtain who puts it all together.
Yes, I am the little Oz. I am the small Oz.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm Sharon. I'm originally from North Carolina. I have military parents, so I moved around quite a bit. I came here as your events coordinator because I love a good get together. Anytime we can gather people together and have a good time and eat good food and have great conversations and laugh I love being a part of that. As you can see, my favorite color is purple.
Yay.
So if it comes in purple, I'm going to buy it.
Okay.
So just so everyone knows.
Good.
And so now with the pandemic and us unfortunately unable to get together, I have transferred myself over more into the IT department in a way. So I'm now working on kind of our virtual services and virtual get-togethers, and trying to take the same spirit of gathering and getting together in a virtual format.
Great, and you're doing a wonderful job, let me tell you. So how do you work this magic? Exactly what goes into putting together a Sunday service?
So it's quite a bunch of little parts. So we have like our PowerPoint slides for our background, and then of course the worship team, which is so awesome, takes the time out and will funnel their videos into our Google Drive, which we kind of have marked out by date and title. And so I end up with, if you can see, a whole bunch of videos from Allan and Rev Joe and our worship associates and Mike with the music. And they're kind of housed in this one place so that I can then take them and put them into our video software, Camtasia, which is how we string it all together and add all the fun effects so that it's all one cohesive video. And I take my script, which is my order of service, which is where you see all this paper to kind of put it together.
Great. So where do you get some of the backgrounds that you use and the videos? Because there have been some really beautiful pictures.
So it depends. Sometimes I'll take the theme, whatever it is, and I will try to figure out what photos emphasize that theme. Like for our service this coming Sunday is called Crossing Borders, so I thought it would really be nice to have this kind of ribbon that looks like a road, but it's not completely a road, but makes you think of traveling. And Rev Joe's going to later talk about the Underground Railroad, so I thought that would be a nice tie-in. And then I kind of go from there, and like I said, I add some fun little effects in there just to keep the theme consistent, and really just something nice to look at and keep your attention.
That's great. That's wonderful. So now the pictures, can the congregation send pictures to you for the library that
Of
you
course.
can keep? Good.
Yes. So if there's anything in particular that people really want to see, or they have a particular attachment to, I'm definitely open to including them in the service, and even on our social media. I just got, so I think Jean Martin sent something from Wally Adler, I believe, who was a longtime congregant, had a nice photo that we put up on our Throwback Thursdays on our Facebook.
Oh yeah, I love those.
So we
Those are
can
great.
see, just what life used to be like when some of our congregants were smaller, or just a look back at the history of the place. I think it's always fun to to sneak peek at those things.
Yeah. So now, how long does it take for you to put a service together?
So this is about a couple of hours, because you have to make sure, one, you have all the uploads, which sometimes is, for all of my tech people, easier said than done, because it starts off really good and then it cuts off, or the internet's not working. So once I have all the elements, I have to download them, and then I have to upload them again into our video software, which you see here, and then I start putting it together. And so I will take like our intro slide, which you'll see this coming Sunday, and then I'll put in like a music component that I found. And then I gotta watch it to make sure that it lines up correctly. And so And so now you have the music in the background. But two things just happened. In the beginning, it was completely silent.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to make sure that I shorten that track. So then I have to click it and adjust it so that the music kicks in immediately, so that you can hear it as soon as it starts.
Wow.
And then I have to make sure that the background is as long as the intro, and I can make that as long as short as I need it. But then there's a lot of pieces, parts, and then I'll show you. Then we have to like transition. So again, I got to go back to, let's say, we got to do our announcements, which I get from, some of which I get from our weekly announcements that we send out, and sometimes they come from people emailing, like we have a special church announcement coming up, and so I have to make sure that those things get into the service. And so once again, we've got to download, and I've always got to make sure it's in the right file type. That's another one. JPEG versus PNG versus PDF. It doesn't always translate from one program into another, so sometimes there's some converting involved. And so then we will put our next slide in so that we can transfer from one part to the other. Like I said, sometimes it takes a little bit because we have some pieces, and make that a little smaller so it can fit into the next space. Yep. And then so, once I get there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and so then we'll transfer to the next slide over the music. Boom. And then, so quick. It happens so quick. So it's a lot of this, like restructuring and sending over and setting it up. So then, like I said, it'll go from now to our announcements. But the music track is now too long. So again, I've got to shorten that significantly because I only want the music in the intro and not throughout the whole thing because you guys got to hear your announcements.
Yep.
So you get all the important information that's going on at the church.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and so sometimes it layers all across the software. So you can see like there's track 1 and then track 2 because it layers from one to the other.
Great. So this looks like a lot of work, and you do it so well. I mean, it's just, every Sunday is just really, really wonderful to watch.
So glad.
So Sharon, over the past COVID year, what have you learned from this year?
I think in the beginning, I took little things for granted, like just seeing people and being able to go and do things, and then having to shelter in place. I realized how much I miss that interaction. I call myself an ambivert. I like to be out amongst the people, but then I really relish that time by myself to recharge. But then I got too much recharge time.
Yeah.
I was itching for something to do and someone to talk to in some way of interacting with the world. So it really made me rethink about those relationships and the people that you're like, oh, I'll talk to them tomorrow, or I'll see them tomorrow. And just being more conscious of spending time with people and really checking in on everyone, because the world became so still and so quiet. And I think we really took the time to cut out the clutter and the noise and focus on one another, and I really appreciate that. Because you just never know how much time you have.
Right.
And so cherishing those moments was good.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you. And Sharon, again, thank you for all of the work that you do on these services. And I'm sure that I speak for everyone in the congregation and anyone who watches when I say that you do an amazing job and that you and your work are greatly appreciated.
Oh, thank you so much, Peggy. Hope to see you guys soon.
In the past year, congregational life has changed in so many ways. The congregants who are part of the worship team really wanted to help celebrate the work of the staff. The staff want to celebrate the work of the volunteers. Together, we work as a community to make what we have here precious and sacred and sustainable, and without the work of all of us, none of this could be done. Remember, when you go out into the world, that there are people struggling in ways you may not understand, working, volunteering, doing their best, just as you are. And when you see those people, do your best to give them a smile or a wave or an acknowledgement that you see them, that you see their work, their efforts, and that you are working with them.